What's up, guys? Before we jump into it, just want to let you know that we live over on my Twitch channel as of this video going up. We're going to be getting some footage here for upcoming videos you'll see on the channel. So if you want to come hang out, chat all things gaming, life, whatever it may be, feel free to. Links in the description below. I'd love to see you out there. That said, let's get into the video. Now, I know it's potentially an overused saying, a joke, whatever you want to call it, but seriously, it rings true. Is it really a Call of Duty update if there aren't secret changes? Now, naturally, yes, sometimes there are those changes that go unmentioned and under the radar for good reason, because they may be foreshadowing something coming up, they may be an Easter egg thing happening, but then there are things that don't really make much sense as to why they aren't mentioned. And today we're going to be breaking down a handful of that range and spectrum of changes of stuff that makes sense as to why it's not mentioned, but then others that doesn't really make sense. So as we go along, leave your thoughts down below. What do you think of some of these changes here with this last update to Black Ops Cold War and Warzone? Like it, dislike it, love it, hate it, whatever it is, feel free to let me know. As well, if you are new to the channel, do be sure to subscribe button. We're on the road to 400,000 subscribers, and we'll keep you up to date with all things Black Ops Cold War, Warzone, and anything COD related. We got a lot of cool stuff you won't want to miss. And finally, if you end up using my creator code Espresso in the in-game shop at all, feel free to tweet me a picture of it. I'd love to shout out some of your generous support here in the upcoming videos. That said, let's talk about these secret changes. So let's start with Warzone, because that's where we're going to see the majority of these changes coming from. Firstly, in Warzone, the biggest thing that changed under the radar, if you ask me, is that there's a new sort of point of interest that you can now visit within Verdansk, whether in Plunder or Battle Royale. But there's a new area that was previously inaccessible, that being a brand new bunker, or not like the bunkers that we had seen since launch, but instead something underground in Verdansk. Now, this may not be super worthwhile unless you're playing Plunder, because you can get an absolute boatload of cash here with this, but you can also probably get a quick start in BR, but it's not somewhere that I'd really hang around with, but it is pretty cool to explore as is. But out at airport, actually on the runway, there is a crater that was there beforehand, but now there's the ability that you can actually go into what is now a sort of cavern of sorts below that. Inside, we see a few of the fuel tankers, a few electronics and comms rooms, and as well, what appears to be a very, very similar, if not identical, room and layout from the mission Desperate Measures in the Cold War campaign as you approach the bunker inside the Lubyanka building. Now, this is interesting in and of itself, because we could be uncovering more of what was actually in Verdansk in that time of the Cold War if they decide to do a sort of time bridge thing here with introducing new points of interest in Verdansk that ties the worlds between Cold War and Modern Warfare together a little further. We could see that maybe the entire Verdansk International Airport was built over top of what was then previously some Soviet testing facilities or such, because we do see barrels of Nova 6 gas right there, which right now are visual adjustments. You can't actually interact with them at all. I think it'd be kind of cool if we see these as more explosive barrels coming at some point where you could actually shoot them, blow up, and then just like a gas grenade would act, maybe it stuns and does some damage to enemies near that, but right now it is all visual. But right now, I'm curious to see if this leads to anything else or serves as maybe foreshadowing for what's coming within Warzone. But it's really cool that it was added in under the radar, and again, is a cool little place to explore. Like I said, functionally, it's good for Plunder. I think that I had like 400,000 cash right off the rip when I first jumped in and explored. And in BR, I'm sure that it can also yield some pretty good legendary crate spawns and other quick cash yields, but you're going to be trapped down there. It's not somewhere that I'd want to hang around with, because you can go in a circle when exploring all the rooms here at this, but you can end up getting in and out by either that crater, or there's a new ladder that goes up in one of the runway buildings there in the middle of the tarmac. But it's pretty cool. If you haven't checked it out, definitely recommend doing so. The next unnamed and unmentioned change was that of something to the agency and GRU suppressors. Now, the big thing with suppressors within Cold War weaponry versus Modern Warfare weaponry, especially in Warzone, is the fact that there really wasn't anything that made them one-to-one directly comparable. At least that is until now, because up until this point, there was no damage range adjustment or buff that the suppressors offered, or at least those higher tier suppressors of the agency and GRU suppressors offered, whereas you had the monolithic suppressor in Modern Warfare weaponry that offered that sound suppression and damage range increase. That was actually changed with this update, where we now have the agency suppressor and the GRU suppressors, both including sound suppression and damage range now for the first time, after a slightly secondary update that went live shortly after the Season 1 integration. But that's actually huge, because while there is a lot of stuff that makes some weaponry from Cold War stand out from the pack, not only in Cold War weaponry, but also Modern Warfare weaponry, putting them into the top Warzone weapons overall, But now that we have this ability to add damage range, it makes it even better because now you can stay off the radar and get some added benefits on top of that. So that's a huge change here that was made within Warzone and is something that may affect the very meta of how weapons are built out in the future. So keep that one in mind. The next change that was made here may have been expected when you consider the fact that we're going from one game engine with weaponry from Cold War into another with Warzone. One change that was made, though, was some of the big changes in how camos look from Cold War weaponry. Now, right now, we do not have the zombies camos integrated into Warzone just yet, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that one turns out because Dark Aether looks fantastic if you ask me. But when you look at Gold, Diamond, and DM Ultra or Dark Matter Ultra from Cold War's MP, they look tremendously different than that of what they do in Cold War. And in some cases, especially for Diamond, I don't think they look good at all. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm completely separated from the pack here on this one, but these camos with this new adjustment to a different engine seemingly have kind of switched that art direction as well, where they go for a more realistic approach to it, but in some of those fundamental design elements of how these camos work, they're not necessarily realistic. So therefore they're distorted a little bit in how they look, but those were some big changes that aren't one-to-one from Cold War to Warzone. Additionally, we saw intel missions introduced here within this new update for Warzone as well, which we've talked about a couple of times here on the channel already. The newest introduction of them offers up a new cutscene that shows the air quote end of Modern Warfare storyline within Warzone, where you stop Zakaya from launching the nuke, and then we learn that Soap is coming as a result of that. But that was introduced to this update as well. One interesting thing for those that really like cosmetics is that this update also offered a sort of workaround for how you can see even more cosmetics than what is displayed directly in your shop, either in Warzone or in Black Ops Cold War. How the shop works is you have 5 bundles at each of the categories. From either the featured categories, the blueprints, or the operators categories, you have about those 15 there that are always on rotation. And when you buy one, something else replaces it so that there's always that full shelf of what you have, unless you purchase absolutely everything in the game, which I would not recommend doing. But if you are interested in seeing what other things are coming through the shop at some point through season 1 so far, or if you actually want to even go and buy something ahead of its display in your shop, you can actually do that by taking a look at the store tabs in the Create a Class in Warzone. You can't do this in Cold War, but in Warzone, it showcases everything that's actually in the game files right now, what's accessible and upcoming within the shop. So an interesting little workaround for some stuff you won't quite see just yet if you are interested in it. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about on the Warzone side of things is actually something that was changed under the radar, but has now been fixed out. But that being the XP tokens being removed. As of the Season 1 integration, it seems like it was a bug and unintentional, but those players that had items from Modern Warfare saved up for their XP tokens, they couldn't actually use them in Warzone. All you had on offer was what you got from Cold War. But now, of course, that was reverted. You have all the options to use those items in Warzone, but I think the one thing that still does persist is that if you have XP tokens from Modern Warfare earned going forward, you can't actually use those in, say, things like Cold War. The only crossover would be in Warzone. So a sort of still caveat there with that, but not as big a blunder as what we saw beforehand with the initial integration. Jumping over to Cold War, though, we did see a couple of things here adjusted in relation to specific items for Cold War. One being the Kills Behind Cover Camo Challenge. That was adjusted, and I'm sure a lot of people will find this to be very nice to see as a change because it was very odd in how these tracked, and it didn't seem like the parameters made too much sense. In a since deleted tweet, Raven did clarify, saying that it changed how some of the positioning was tracked and what was considered behind cover, what positioning the players themselves had to be in for it to count as well. So it should be something that tracks a little bit easier now at this point. Another thing that is really interesting here is that we, of course, have that free trial going on for multiplayer in Black Ops Cold War. But with this, we also, of course, see then that the trial players are now introduced with their own special trial player tag. So it is something that you may come across some of those players if they are on that free trial that could be a little bit of a system shock, given that, of course, we see skill-based matchmaking is usually incredibly unforgiving. So with these players being placed into it, I don't know if that adjusts any of the skill-based matchmaking algorithm for right now, or if it's just some random chance you may come across it if you are a higher skilled player, or whatever the case may be, but you may see those introduced into your game as well. There also seemingly was a name change color in the nameplates whenever you kill or get killed by players in game as well, but that's something of a smaller detail that I noticed going through some of my matches. Finally, the last change that we'll talk about here is Modern Warfare, and it is something that we have mentioned before. The fact that this update previewed a few new introductions in terms of weaponry a little bit beforehand. The CX-9 and the Psychov, the SMG and the pistol. We do know that there is the RAAL or the RAL LMG coming at some point as well, but this, as we mentioned before, all but but confirming that we'll get new weapons within Modern Warfare as well. But that is where we're at here at that. That is 10 changes that went under the radar and unmentioned here from the initial Season 1 integration, and a little bit of an update that went live shortly thereafter that as well. So that said, that's where we're going to wrap it up. I would love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section down below. Any of these that you particularly like, maybe dislike, whatever it is, feel free to let me know your thoughts. But hopefully enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Black Ops Cold War, Warzone, and of course, anything COD related. We'll keep you up to date here with all of it. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up here as we round into the next week and beyond. So make sure you stick it here if you're interested in any of that. If you also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get connected outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. If you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. That said, thanks so much for watching. My name has been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.